How did one single man pull off India's most massive financial heist? Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unravel the gripping, completely insane true story of unchecked ambition, systemic blindness, and a giant house of cards that literally brought an entire economy to its knees.
Seriously, think about that for a second. How could one individual find a $3 billion blind spot in a nation's tightly regulated financial infrastructure? We're talking about manipulating the massive, invisible flow of money between banks just to artificially inflate the entire stock market. Well, to understand the heist, we first have to understand the mastermind. Born into a modest, middle-class family back in 1954, Harshad Mehta wasn't handed a financial empire. He had to build it from scratch. After doing odd jobs, he eventually found his true calling as a jobber on the Bombay Stock Exchange. By 1984, he started Grow More Research. And what really set him apart was this relentless optimism and an absolute obsession with undervalued blue-chip companies. By 1990, his aggressive risk appetite pushed him from being just another small-time broker to achieving absolute market prominence.
He wasn't just trading stocks anymore. He became a cultural icon. The media literally dubbed him the Amitabh Bachchan of Dalal Street. He just exuded this supreme confidence that earned him legendary status. He didn't quietly buy stocks. He shouted their hidden value from the rooftops to anyone who would listen. And this charisma? It generated blind trust from retail investors. Whatever the big bull touched turned to gold. But here's the million-dollar, or rather billion-dollar question. Where on earth was he getting the infinite stream of cash to buy all these stocks?
Part 1. Hacking the banking system.
The secret wasn't actually in the stock market at all. It was buried deep within the banks, specifically involving something called the Ready Forward or RF deal. Now, I know that sounds complicated, but let's break it down. Think of an RF deal as a short-term, secured, pawnbroker-style loan between two banks. Bank A needs cash, so they temporarily sell government securities to Bank B with a promise to buy them back a few days later. It's meant to be a closed, incredibly secure loop strictly between banks. But Harshad Mehta completely hijacked it. The system was designed so banks dealt directly with each other. Mehta's real hack was using his massive influence to position himself as the indispensable middleman. He negotiated the deals between the banks, but then, and here's where it gets absolutely crazy, he manipulated the settlement instructions. He ensured that the multi-court checks issued by the lending banks were routed directly into his own personal accounts, completely bypassing the actual selling bank. And how did he hide this? Well, when banks made these trades, they didn't hand over physical bonds. They used paper IOUs called bank receipts, or BRs. Mehta colluded with corrupt officials at smaller cooperative banks to issue fake, forged bank receipts backed by absolutely nothing. He handed these worthless pieces of paper to major lending banks, took their real cash, and pumped it directly into the stock market. It was a massive illegal cycle of unsecured liquidity. He essentially found a way to print his own money. Part 2. The illusion of wealth.
Now, how do you justify buying a stock at astronomical prices without regulators knocking on your door? You invent a completely new logic. Mehta's psychological masterstroke was his replacement cost theory. He confidently argued that older companies should be valued at what it would cost to build them from scratch today, not their historical accounting cost. Using the stolen bank funds, he aggressively pushed stocks like ACC Cement from an ordinary 200 rupees all the way up to 9,000 rupees. It sounded like visionary genius, but it was really just a massive smokescreen.
And to sell the illusion, he had to live the illusion. His extravagant, highly public lifestyle became the stuff of legend. We're talking a 15,000 square foot penthouse in Worli, a private putting green, and a fleet of 29 cars. Most notably, that flashy, fully imported Toyota Lexus. The guy literally paid a staggering 28 crore rupees in advance tax just to flex. This sheer extravagance acted as the ultimate illusion of success that kept regulators, complicit bankers, and everyday investors completely spellbound.
But behind the shiny magazine covers and the imported cars was a dark, hidden reality. 4,000 crores. In 1992, that was the equivalent of roughly $3 billion US. That right there represents the massive gaping hole he secretly dug into the Indian banking system to fund his historic stock market rally.
Part 3. The Trap and the Fall. But listen, every house of cards eventually collapses. And the unraveling of this heist was swift, brutal, and totally devastating. It started with a whisper and ended with an absolute roar.
On April 23, 1992, a sharp investigative journalist named Sucheta Dalal published a bombshell expose in the Times of India. The headline, "Broker asked to square up Rs 500 crore." She had spotted an irreconcilable gap at the State Bank of India. The bank had finally noticed the missing funds and the worthless paper. The domino effect was triggered.
The sheer scale of the panic was completely unprecedented. The Sensex had rocketed from 2,000 points in January to a euphoric 4,500 points in April. But the absolute second that expose dropped, the bank slammed their vault shut. The sudden withdrawal of his diverted funds caused the bubble to burst violently, plummeting the market straight back down to 2,500 points. The fuel was gone and the engine completely stalled.
Then came the immediate chaos. The government panicked, issuing an ordinance that voided any transactions linked to the accused brokers. This created the infamous tainted shares. Imagine waking up to find that millions of shares, bought by genuine, innocent investors, were suddenly rendered completely worthless overnight, just because they had passed through the hands of the accused at some point. The entire market was paralyzed.
Part 4. Legacy, Lessons, and Myths.
As the dust finally settled on ruined lives, bankrupted retail investors, and shattered portfolios, it was time to separate the facts of the heist from the fiction. Look, it's really tempting to believe the myth of a lone, evil mastermind acting in total isolation. But the truth is so much more complex. This was a profoundly broken, greedy system. Mehta pulled the trigger, sure, but the outdated physical receipt systems, the complicit bankers willing to look the other way for higher returns, and the completely asleep-at-the-wheel regulators, they provided the loaded gun.
The colossal economic fallout triggered a mind-bending 1 lakh crore market wipeout. But from this unbelievable destruction came vital, necessary reform. It violently forced India to modernize its financial guardrails, shifting away from archaic physical paper to digital, dematerialized trading. And the regulatory body, SEBI, was finally granted the massive statutory powers it needed to actually police the markets effectively.
So what is the real serious takeaway for you today? True wealth building relies on fundamentals, not blindly following the herd or charismatic gurus on TV. You have to avoid market manipulation hype, stick to strict risk management, demand transparency, and always beware of flashy new valuation theories that are just designed to justify the unjustifiable. Which leaves us with an incredibly lingering, provocative question to ponder. Looking back at his undeniable understanding of the market's deepest flaws, was Harshad Mehta a visionary financial genius who just flew a little too close to the sun? Or was he simply a glorified system hacker driven by pure opportunistic greed?
Well, I'm going to leave that for you to debate. Let me know what you think the answer is down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I promise to keep providing the absolute best, deeply researched financial content to all of my subscribers. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious and stay informed.